I knew something was wrong the second I saw her pull into my driveway alone. No baby seat in the back. No diaper bag. Just her pale, shaking, and clutching something in her hands like it might vanish if she let go. She said, "He told me to bring him to you if anything happened." But she hadn't brought the baby. She'd brought a letter. And a look in her eyes I'll never forget, like she'd seen something she wished she could unsee. That's when the ground cracked under everything I thought I knew. My name is Adam. And this is the story of how I almost made it to happily ever after, until I found out the child I thought was mine might be my brother's, the same brother who vanished without a trace 2 months ago. We'll start with Ben, my younger brother. 2 years apart. Grew up more like opposites than siblings. I was the responsible one, according to Mom. Straight A student, captain of the track team, majored in accounting. Ben was fire and denim, impulsive, reckless, the kind of guy who never showed up to Thanksgiving empty-handed, but always came with a story that made our aunt clutch her pearls. He was the type who'd skip rent to buy concert tickets, but also once drove 6 hours overnight just to help me move when my back gave out. That was Ben. And then there was Emily. I met her the way you meet most people these days, swipe right, cheesy message, awkward coffee. But somehow it worked. She had this quiet strength, like she'd already survived the worst and wasn't afraid of much anymore. We were good together. No fireworks, no drama. Just steady, kind love. And after years of watching Ben set fire to everything he touched, I craved that kind of peace. She got pregnant a year into our relationship. Unplanned, but not unwelcome. We moved in together, talked about names. Set up a nursery in the second bedroom of my apartment, pale yellow walls, rocking chair in the corner, a mobile with little wooden clouds spinning slow over the crib. We were going to be a family. Ben showed up one day out of nowhere, said he was in town for a while, which could mean anything with him. But when he saw Emily's belly, he froze for a second. Just one. Then he smiled, slapped me on the back, and said, "Damn, big bro. You're really doing it." They didn't know each other well. Or so I thought. But sometimes I'd catch glances between them I couldn't quite place. The kind that lingered too long. Once I asked Emily if they'd met before, back when she bartended downtown. She shrugged, said maybe he looked familiar, but no, she didn't know him. I believed her. Because love is trusting the person beside you more than the doubts inside you. Ben left again a few weeks later. Said he had stuff to handle. Never explained. Just packed his beat-up duffel and disappeared the way he always did, without warning or a forwarding address. Then 2 months passed. No calls. No texts. Nothing. I figured he was off the grid. Jail, maybe. Or couch surfing across state lines. Wouldn't be the first time. But then Emily showed up on my doorstep, alone, holding a sealed envelope, and said, "He told me to bring Liam to you if anything happened." That's when I felt it. That low, gut deep pull. Like I'd just stepped off the edge of a cliff, and the ground hadn't caught up yet. The letter was in Ben's handwriting. I'd know it anywhere, all block caps, messy, like he never learned cursive and never cared to. Inside was a single page. "Adam, if you're reading this, something went wrong. I'm sorry. I never meant for it to end like this. Take care of him. Raise him like your own, because I don't know if I'll be around to explain. And if there's even a chance he's mine." I had to make sure he was with someone I trust. That sentence hit like a hammer, not because of what it said, but because of what it implied. Ben hadn't been sure. Or maybe he had, but was too scared to put it in writing. Maybe he didn't want to name the truth, because naming it meant risking Liam's safety. He hadn't written it for clarity. He'd written it for protection for Liam. And now, that burden was mine. Emily stood there, tears sliding down her cheeks, whispering that she didn't know. That it was one night. A mistake. That she thought it was over between us. That she hadn't even seen Ben again after that. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But I looked down at that envelope, at the jagged confession scrawled in ink, and I felt something old and terrible rise in my chest. Not just heartbreak, not just betrayal, but the sinking feeling that the family I thought I was building might have started on a lie. The baby was asleep at her friend's place. That's what she said. But I think the truth is she was afraid to bring him near me. Afraid of what I might say, or what I might see. Because at 3 months old, Liam had Ben's eyes. And suddenly I wasn't just a man trying to be a father. I was a brother trying to understand if he'd been made a fool. Sleep never came that night. Just the slow, steady tick of fear. Didn't turn on the TV. Didn't touch my dinner. Just sat on the edge of the nursery rocker, the one I built with my own 2 hands, staring at the tiny socks in the dresser drawer. Each pair looked like a promise I couldn't keep. That letter? It didn't just break my heart. It rewrote everything. Because if Liam wasn't mine, then what had the last year of my life been? A dress rehearsal for someone else's story? Emily didn't stay the night. After she handed me the letter, she waited for something, a reaction, maybe. Anger. Rage. I think she expected me to yell, but I didn't. I just looked at her and said, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Her mouth moved, but no sound came out at first. Then finally, because I didn't think it would matter. I thought he was gone for good. I thought we were past it. You thought, I repeated, quiet and even. But you didn't know. She nodded, eyes wet. And I was scared of what it would do to us. Scared of what it would do to us. That's when I realized she hadn't just betrayed me with Ben. She'd chosen my ignorance over my right to know the truth. For 3 months, she let me live in a dream I didn't even know was a dream. She left that night, without protest. Didn't say, "I'll call you." Didn't ask me to forgive her. Just grabbed her coat and walked out the door like she knew this wasn't her moment to speak. It was mine. The next morning, I made the call. DNA testing lab. Discreet. Private. I asked how long it would take to get results. They said 48 hours if I brought the samples in by noon. Liam was still with her friend, a woman named Marcy I'd met once, maybe twice. I called her, explained what was happening in the broadest, most clinical terms possible. She didn't ask many questions, just said she understood and would bring Liam over in the afternoon. He was sleeping when she handed him to me, warm, soft, unaware of the storm swirling around his tiny head. And as I held him, I couldn't help it. I still loved him. Whether or not he was mine biologically, I'd fed him at 3 a.m., rocked him through colic, sang him out of key lullabies I hadn't realized I remembered from childhood. I'd planned his first Halloween costume. I'd kissed his forehead so many times I could trace it blindfolded. He was mine in every way that had ever mattered. But I still needed the truth. Because love and truth aren't the same thing. And sometimes, love without truth is just an illusion dressed in comfort. The nurse took the samples without fanfare. One cheek swab from me. One from Liam. A sealed envelope. A promise of results in 2 days. I walked out into the sunlight feeling colder than I had in weeks. Not because of the air, but because doubt has a way of getting into your bloodstream. And once it's there, nothing feels solid. I went home, sat at the kitchen table, and did the thing I swore I wouldn't do. I called my mother. She picked up on the first ring, asked how the baby was, said she missed him, said she couldn't wait to come visit again. I told her she might not want to buy a plane ticket just yet. When I told her about Ben, about Emily, about the letter, she didn't say anything for a long time. Then, finally, in that quiet, careful voice she always used when we were kids and scraped our knees, "Do you want to know what I think?" "No," I said, "but I'm guessing you're going to tell me anyway." She let out a sigh. "Even if Liam isn't yours, that doesn't mean he isn't your son." "I know," I whispered, "but it changes things." "Yes," she said, "it changes things. But it doesn't have to end them." I didn't answer, because I didn't know what ending looked like anymore. That night, Emily texted me. Just a single message. "If you want me to leave town after the results, I will." I stared at it for 10 minutes. Typed, "Okay." Deleted it. Typed, "We need to talk." Deleted that too. Then just shut the phone off and left it face down on the coffee table. Because some nights, there's nothing to say. Some nights, all you can do is wait for the truth to finish getting dressed. The next day, I started thinking about Ben. Really thinking. I hadn't told anyone yet, not even my mom, but I'd been getting calls. Weird ones. No voice. Just static. Same number. 3 times. Then nothing. Blocked. It didn't feel like a coincidence. And that letter? That tone. Like he knew something bad was coming. Like he wanted to warn me. Like he didn't trust anyone but me. It didn't feel like Ben. Ben joked through danger. Laughed in the face of it. But this? This was written by someone afraid. Which meant, maybe he didn't disappear. Maybe he was running. Or worse. Maybe someone was chasing him. And Liam? That baby was a breadcrumb. A trail back to something darker. Something I hadn't seen coming. The DNA results were supposed to come the next morning. Another night without rest. My body still, but my thoughts wouldn't stop pacing. Instead, I laid on the floor of Liam's nursery, listening to the soft clicks of the ceiling fan and watching the shadows stretch long across the walls, pale yellow, like sunlight bottled in paint. Emily had picked the color. Said it reminded her of hope. Now it just reminded me of lies. I wasn't angry anymore. I was hollow. Because sometimes, the truth doesn't shatter you. It seeps in, quiet, cold, like water rising under a door, and by the time you realize what's happening, everything's already soaked. At 8:14 a.m., the email came in. Subject line, paternity results, confidential. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. The file was PDF. Just one sentence that mattered. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. Liam was mine, biologically. legally, entirely. And yet, I didn't feel relief. I felt something closer to grief, because knowing Liam was mine meant facing what I didn't want to admit out loud. Ben had lied, or at the very least, he believed a lie. But why? Why write a letter casting doubt if there was none? Why vanish like he had a reason to fear for his life? Unless he wasn't protecting me from the truth. He was protecting Liam from something else entirely. I needed answers. Not just from Emily, from anyone who might have known what Ben had been caught up in. So I started digging. Old contacts. Texts I hadn't sent in years. One of them did. A guy named Caleb, used to bartend with Ben back in the day. Said Ben had been acting weird the last time he saw him. Kept asking questions about a guy named Randall, who ran an off-the-books poker circuit out in the West Side Industrial Park. Said Ben thought Randall was laundering money for someone bigger, someone he wouldn't name. Why would Ben care about that? I asked. Caleb paused, then said something that made my stomach twist. He wasn't asking for himself. Said someone he cared about might be in danger. Someone he cared about. Emily? Or Liam? Or both. That night, I asked her to come over. She didn't hesitate. Showed up in jeans and a hoodie, hair pulled back, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes dropped to my hands the second she walked in. You got the results? I nodded. He's mine. She didn't cry. Just let out a slow breath, like she'd been holding it since the day Liam was born. I didn't lie to you, she said quietly. I really didn't know. But part of me hoped. Hoped what? That it was yours. That it always had been. I believed her. And maybe that was the hardest part. Because she had hurt me, but she hadn't done it on purpose. She just made a choice based on fear. And fear is a messy compass. Emily, I said, I need you to tell me everything. About Ben. About Atlanta. About whatever he thought was coming for him. She sat down, rubbed her eyes. He never told me the full story, she said. Only pieces. That he'd found something, documents, numbers, names. Said it was bigger than he could handle. Said if he pushed too far, someone might come for him. And he gave you Liam because of that? She nodded. Said if anything ever happened to him, I had to take the baby to you. Because you were the only one who could keep him safe. I blinked. But why me? She looked at me like the answer was obvious. Because he trusted you more than he trusted anyone else. Even himself. That night, I found the key. Literally. Inside the same envelope as the letter, tucked between the folds, hidden like a secret. A small brass key, unlabeled. At first, I thought it was nothing. But the next day, curiosity got the best of me. I drove to Ben's old apartment, the one he hadn't lived in for over a year, the one I helped him move out of when he said he was finally cleaning up his act. The building was mostly empty, scheduled for demo. I sweet-talked the property manager into letting me in. Said I'd lost something sentimental. He handed me the old mailroom keys without asking too many questions. Box 7C. The key fit like it was made for it. Inside, a single manila envelope. No return address. Just one word scrawled in Ben's all-caps handwriting. Insurance. Inside were 3 things. A flash drive. A second letter, addressed to me. A photo. I opened the photo first. It was Liam, in a stroller, but not recently newborn, maybe 2 weeks old. And standing next to him, hand on the stroller, was a man I didn't recognize. Bald, heavy-set, gray jacket, looking straight into the camera like he knew he was being watched. The note said, if you see this man, run. He doesn't ask questions. He doesn't leave fingerprints. My blood went cold. Ben hadn't been afraid for himself. He'd been hunted, and he'd left behind more than just out. He'd left me a breadcrumb trail that didn't lead back to betrayal. It led to something else, something worse. There's a different kind of fear that settles in your chest when you realize someone you love wasn't just keeping secrets. They were doing it to shield you from something they couldn't outrun. I stared at that photo for a long time. Not because I recognized the man, but because I didn't. And that felt more dangerous than anything. He wasn't a memory. He wasn't from some old neighborhood fight or a barroom story Ben once told. He was a stranger. And yet, there he was, one hand on Liam's stroller, the other tucked in his coat like he was holding something out of frame. I took a picture of the photo with my phone and slid the original back into the envelope. Then I opened the second letter. Adam, if you're reading this, well, crap. That probably means things didn't go my way. I thought I had it handled. Classic me, right? Thought I could outsmart guys who don't blink when they bury evidence or people. Turns out I poked something bigger than I could dodge. Listen, I don't know what's going to happen next. But if I disappear, I need you to take care of Liam. Not just because he might be yours, but because if he's mine, there's a target on his back. There's a guy, Avery. Looks like a gym teacher, acts like a ghost. If you see him, run. Maddox doesn't play fair. Hell, he doesn't even play by the rules of the universe. I left you a flash drive. It's got receipts, names, numbers, stuff I found digging where I shouldn't have. Don't go to the cops. Too many smiles, not enough clean hands. Keep the kid safe, bro. Even if that means telling him I was just the crazy uncle. I'd rather him hate me later than lose him now. B. Maddox. The name didn't register at first, but something about it scraped against an old memory. I pulled out my laptop, typed it in. Richard Dane. Real estate developer. Investor. Private equity. Loud suits. Fake smiles. A man who shook hands with politicians in front of cameras and probably paid off city inspectors behind closed doors. And suddenly, everything snapped into focus. Ben had worked for one of Maddox's shell companies 3 years ago. Said it was short-term consulting. A paycheck, nothing more. But now it looked like Ben had been sniffing around something Maddox wanted buried. And if this Avery guy was Maddox's cleanup crew, then Liam wasn't just my son. He was a liability. I called Emily, told her to pack a bag. No questions, just go? Now, I'll explain when I get there. To her credit, she didn't argue. In fact, when I pulled up to the rental house, she was already outside, Liam in her arms, duffel at her feet, keys in her other hand like she was ready to drive herself if I hadn't shown up. Her eyes met mine, sharp and searching. "What's going on?" she asked, voice steady. But her gaze kept darting to the street. I handed her the photo. She went pale. "I've seen him," she whispered. "Once. At the grocery store." He smiled at Liam. I thought it was nothing. "It wasn't," I said. "Ben left us a warning. We're not safe here." She didn't flinch, just nodded. "Then let's go," she said. And the way she said it, like she'd been ready for this moment all along, made me realize something I hadn't before. She wasn't just scared. She was prepared. We didn't go to my place. Or hers. We drove 3 towns over to a motel that didn't ask for ID and took cash. I refused to close my eyes. Not while that man might still be out there, looking for Liam. Not while that man might be out there, looking for Liam. And even though Emily had held it together when it mattered most, once the adrenaline wore off, the silence started to eat at her. Meanwhile, Emily was unraveling. She tried to be strong. She really did. But each day in that motel, she grew smaller, quieter. She'd watch Liam sleep like she was waiting for someone to kick in the door. She kept the lights low, flinched every time the phone rang. I tried to comfort her. But comfort has a hard time breathing when danger is sitting across the table. One night, she said something I'll never forget. "I never meant to drag you into this, Adam. If you want out, I'll disappear." I stared at her, hard, then said, "He's my son." She nodded, tears in her eyes. And for the first time in weeks, I saw it, that flicker of hope, that maybe we weren't going to lose this fight. But then Pete called, and everything shifted. "They know," he said. "About the flash drive. About you." "How?" "I don't know. But I got a tip from a contact inside city records. Someone from Maddox's office pulled a property deed you filed 3 years ago. The one with Ben's signature on it. They're trying to connect dots." My mouth went dry. "Is Avery involved?" "Worse," Pete said. "He's gone quiet." Gone quiet. Which meant he wasn't chasing anymore. He was hunting. I moved Emily and Liam again. Used a burner phone. Paid cash. Switched cars. We hid in a cabin Pete's friend owned, tucked into the pines. No cell service. Heat that only worked when you begged the furnace. It was cold, but it was quiet. And for a few days, we breathed. I'd rock Liam to sleep by the fireplace while Emily dozed in a chair. And in those moments, I saw the life we almost had. The one that felt just out of reach. But peace doesn't last long when the past still has your address. The cabin phone rang at 3:12 a.m. Just once. I didn't answer, but I didn't sleep again either. The next day, Pete called from town. Said he was working on a plan. If we could get Maddox's bank transfers linked to the city contracts, we'd have enough to go federal. "But you've got to be sure," he said. "Once this goes public, you can't put the lid back on. I'm sure. You might lose everything." "Then I lose it," I said. "But I'm not raising my son in fear." 2 days later, Pete handed me a folder. "This is it," he said. "Wire fraud. Bribery. Extortion. It's enough." And Ben. Pete shook his head. Still no trace. But there's something else. The last email he sent, the one he never got to deliver, was timestamped 5 hours after he was supposedly last seen. That means someone's lying. I looked down at the folder, at the paper that might finally bring Maddox down, and I remembered what Ben wrote. "Don't let him get away with this." I made the call. Not to the cops. Not to the local paper. To a contact Pete had at a national news outlet. Someone who still believed in the kind of journalism that shakes foundations. I handed it all over. And then I waited for the world to catch fire. The story dropped 3 days later. Front page. Headline in black. City of Lies. Real estate giant tied to bribery. Missing whistleblower and dangerous enforcer. Maddox's photo was right there. So was Avery's, blurry, but clear enough. And in the third column, under a subheading titled The Brother, they printed Ben's name. The world knew now. And Maddox? He couldn't hide anymore. But the story wasn't done yet. Because exposing him? That was just the beginning. The morning the article hit, the world didn't end. It just got louder. Phone calls. Messages. Reporters outside City Hall. People digging up old deals, old evictions, old stories they hadn't dared tell until someone else did first. Maddox's empire cracked fast, like a frozen lake in spring. First, the Board of Inspectors opened an internal investigation. Then 2 council members resigned. And by the end of the week, federal agents were at Maddox's penthouse. He didn't get arrested that day, but they froze his assets. And for men like him, that's worse than prison. It's identity theft, the slow peeling away of power. But I didn't celebrate, because we still hadn't found Ben, and I wasn't sure if we ever would. 3 days later, I got the call I'd stopped hoping for. It was Pete. He sounded tired, but there was a lift in his voice I hadn't heard before. Adam, they found him. I sat down. Alive. A pause. Yeah, alive. They found Ben in a safe house 2 counties over. Turns out, he hadn't disappeared. He'd been hidden, moved under a different name, protected by a retired Fed who owed Pete a favor from years back. It was part of a last-ditch plan they'd made when Ben first realized what he was in the middle of. But then the phone lines went dead, and Ben thought we'd all be safer if he stayed a ghost. Until now, seeing him again. I don't have words for it. He looked older, paler, eyes too alert, like someone who kept expecting the worst. But the second he saw Liam, his nephew, his maybe son, his reason for running, something changed. His shoulders dropped. His breath returned. He said my name like it was a prayer. And then he whispered, "You kept him safe." I nodded. Couldn't speak. Because how do you tell your brother you almost hated him, almost blamed him, almost gave up, and still would have done it all again? Later that week, Mom flew in. She cried the second she saw Ben. Not loudly, just the kind of silent cry that comes from a place too deep for words. She held Liam like he was the last good thing left in a fractured world. And for a few minutes, we weren't a family torn apart. We were just 3 generations standing still, broken, healing, and still here. The truth, when it finally came out, was simpler than I expected. Ben had gone to Emily that night because he was scared, not of fatherhood, of what Maddox might do if he knew Ben had a weakness. He told her to take the baby to me because he knew I could keep Liam invisible, protected. He didn't know if Liam was his or mine, but he knew one thing. He trusted me to do what he couldn't. Stay? Ben didn't come back home right away. He gave us space. Said he needed to earn that reunion, not crash into it. So Emily and I moved back in slowly, carefully. We didn't jump back into us. We weren't ready, but we started with walks, conversations on park benches, late-night feedings where we passed Liam between us like a prayer. And little by little, we remembered how to be kind to each other, how to believe in the version of ourselves that hadn't been burned by the truth. One day, I asked Emily what she would have done if the paternity test had gone the other way. She didn't hesitate. I still would have brought him to you. Why? Because you were the only person who ever made him feel safe. That answer did something to me. Not just as a man, not just as a father, but as a brother who had doubted everything. Because in the end, Ben wasn't the villain. He was a man who tried to fix something broken without breaking the people he loved. And Emily? She was never a traitor. Just a scared mother trying to make the least damaging mistake. A year passed. Maddox was indicted. Avery disappeared. Rumors say he fled the country, South America, maybe Eastern Europe. No confirmation. No trail. Some said he was tying up loose ends. Others whispered that Maddox cut him loose to save himself. We still lock the doors twice. Still check over our shoulders. Not because we live in fear, but because some predators don't vanish. They just go quiet. We don't talk about Avery much. Not because we've forgotten, but because we've accepted something darker. He might be gone, but he might still be watching. And Liam? He's for now. He calls me Dad. Sometimes he stares at Ben like he's trying to connect the dots. And one day, when he's old enough, I'll tell him everything, not to confuse him, but to teach him something important. That family isn't built from clean stories. It's built from the people who stayed, who protected you, even when they didn't know how, who showed up, messy, imperfect, and chose to love you anyway. That fall, Ben and I built a treehouse in the backyard. We didn't say much while we worked, just sawed, nailed, passed tools back and forth like we had when we were kids. It wasn't about the treehouse. Not really. It was about putting something back together with our own hands. Something we could look at and say, this, at least, is solid. When it was done, we climbed up there in the cold and watched the world go quiet. Liam was asleep inside. Emily, too. Just us, two brothers under a sky that finally felt still. Ben handed me a beer, like old times. Then said, "You ever think we almost had it all wrong?" I looked at him. "What do you mean?" He smiled, not sadly, just soft around the edges. "We kept trying to save each other. Turns out, we just needed to trust each other." I nodded, and for once, I didn't feel like I was holding a secret or a burden, just a future, a quiet one, the kind you build nail by nail and pass down when they're old enough to climb. We almost made it to happily ever after, and maybe we didn't land there in the way fairy tales promised, but we made it to something better, truth, forgiveness, and the kind of love that survives even when the ground gives out. Because at the end of all this, we weren't just family. We were proof that broken things can be rebuilt, even without a perfect blueprint.